Hello. So in this video, we are going to extend the pattern tutorial that we were working on before, where we have these squares kind of dancing across the screen here. We're going to add the capability to keep track of which square it is and what number it is, because that's going to help us do a little bit more with a coloring pattern a little bit later on. So basically, when it draws each of the squares, I want it to keep track of, is it square number 1, square number 2, square number 3, or kind of like how many frames have we ticked by so far. There is a variable that comes with P5 that keeps track of that, but I want to show you how to kind of make your own to be a little more flexible. So I don't have that variable yet, so I'm going to create a new variable. Say let counter equal, I'm going to start it at 1. That way it's going to keep picking up every single time to keep track of which square we're on, which iteration. So down in the draw function, that's where I'm going to make this counter variable increase. Right, so I'm going to go in this area where I'm moving the square. So I'm just going to do this here. I'm going to write a comment that says increase counter. So I could do, counter plus equals 1, but there's even another shorthand. If I always just want to increase something by 1 every time, I can say counter plus plus. And if I wanted to decrease it, it would be counter minus minus. We'll do counter plus plus here. I know we don't really see this happening yet. Now I could use this feature here to just kind of peek behind the scenes. Eventually, I'm actually going to show it on the drawing here. But if I wanted to give some information that just the coder sees, then I'm going to use this function called console.log. And then anything that I put inside the parentheses here, that's going to show up in our console. And I'll show you where that's at. So if I did a console.log and then pass in the variable counter, then when I run it, it's going to show up down here. So every time that runs, you can see that it's logging that number there. So that's a pretty useful feature if you, like I said, just want to peek behind the scenes a little bit. But I do want to display it on my screen here. So I'm going to take a look at the code where I draw the square. I'm also going to use the text function. That takes in 3 parameters. The first one is the text you want to display. The second one is the X position, and then the last one's the Y position. So I want to show the counter. And then I'm going to use this X and Y to kind of keep it along with the square. Just have it share the same position as the square itself. So at first we don't really see it, but I'll wait until it moves to the next row. So you can see that that number is there and it's counting up. The only thing is that it's the way the X and the Y are working, the text is kind of displaying on the top here. So I'm going to adjust it to be where the position that the text actually gets drawn in is kind of like the center of the square. All right, so I'm going to say this is X plus size divided by 2, so halfway into the square, and then Y plus size divided by 2 as well, because it's square shape. Right, that way we get it to mostly display in the center. And now if you're keeping track of the numbers, you notice that it's skip number 10. It's skip number 9 there. It's skip number, let's see, 26, 27, it did not skip. So every multiple of 9 we're missing here. And that's because by the time it finally tells it to move to the row, this was a little bit too late for it to, it went ahead and drew the square, and then later it moved to the next row. So we want to make this condition happen a little bit earlier. So the condition right now is that X is being too big. So if I want to make this happen sooner, then I want to add a positive number over here. So I think, okay, I'm going to do X plus what? Well, it's kind of having to do with it moving over by that size every time. So I'm going to use that. By the way, x plus size then, when that becomes greater than 400, then that'll be the condition when it trips. All right, and it's really size because that's what we're using to move the square every time. So this is essentially me saying, pretend that we've gotten to that next round. Is that bigger than what we want it to be? So by doing that, then we get all the numbers that we're looking for. All right, so number 9 did show up. 8 was in the corner here, 9 was on the next row. All right, so in the next video, we're going to add color to this animation.